America is a sports loving country, which is evident by their more than 1,050 Olympic gold medals. A land of opportunity with 400 million square miles of distinct geography. The ICC is trying to establish the game of cricket in America since forever. Cricket aficionados, including Nate, are well versed with the fact that the first ever cricket match was played between the USA and Canada in 1844 in the modern Manhattan. Plus, the chronicled legends of John Bard King of Philadelphia, who took more than 250 first class wickets on his three tours to the old Blighty around the turn of the 20th century. In fact, the earliest rules of baseball were devised by Englishmen who migrated from the old Blighty to the USA in the 19th century. And in fact, in 2004, a USA cricket team participated in the Champions Trophy but were hopelessly short of the standards required to play the elite game. But today, things have changed massively, courtesy of the popularity of the T20 cricket and the injection of funds in the American cricket. And to discuss the same and everything exciting in the USA cricket, I have the delightful company of Nate Hayes, who is gracious enough to find time from his busy schedule. Nate, how are you? And thank you for your presence.
Yeah, no problem. I'm doing pretty well. It's pretty warm here, about 34 degrees Celsius, but this is typical for North Carolina. I'm in a nice shady spot. But yeah, cricket's been booming here lately, so I've been very busy. It's been a lot of fun. You can't ask for more than that. It's sometimes I just want it to slow down a little bit so I can stay on top of it all.
That's fantastic. Cricket T20 especially doesn't give you any time to slow down. It's a slam bang format of the game, and we all hope that finally cricket may become a part of the Olympics. And for those people who don't know, America is in fact the only team to have played cricket in the Olympics alongside France in 1900. But the Frenchmen, they were basically the Englishmen as well. But still, the record stays. Today, things are very exciting with a lot of funds coming in with the minor league, major league. A lot of good people from all across the world are coming to the land of opportunity to finally realize the American dream of cricket. Nate, in Pakistan, people do not have the fundamental understanding of how cricket is structured in America, especially the minor league and major league. Kindly tell us about the minor league, how it has been structured, the divisions, and how teams make the playoffs, please.
Okay, before I talk about that, I'll go ahead and flesh out how cricket exists here before minor league cricket so that we'll be able to see the real benefit of the minor league. So before minor league cricket came in, there aren't really cricket clubs where you have a ground, where you have a first team, a second team, a third team, several youth teams in your club, and you travel to another club and you play against them. The leagues here are typically played on public grounds, don't tend to be utilized by existing sports like soccer or baseball or other existing sports. So therefore, cricket tends to be played on the scraps. It tends to be played on the grounds that nobody else really wanted. So you don't have a lot of good playing fields. The infrastructure is the biggest problem in this country. So these are public grounds where the grass is very thick, like this much grass, AstroTurf wicket. So you have a quick wicket, slow outfield, and shorter boundaries. So you have a lot of guys learning the wrong habits in cricket. A lot of guys who want to hit the ball in the air. That is one of the biggest obstacles. That and the fact that there's no real club structure. Everything's like a house. The league leases the grounds from the city, and then the entire league plays on those grounds. And what you have is you don't have people treating the ground like it's their home ground. Maybe not giving it the same care you would for a regular club structure. And also there's no turf wickets, and that reinforces kind of some carelessness. If you want to have a turf wicket, you have to really maintain it, to put a whole lot of teamwork into it, a lot of volunteer time and hours. Cricket is a very expensive sport to be done the correct way, as you know. So minor league cricket does is, firstly, it provides a pathway to the soon-to-come major league cricket. But what it also does is it's 26 teams around the league playing in the same league. If you see the size of the United States, it's a massive country. So that's one of the other challenges. So therefore, minor league cricket is divided into 4 divisions, 2 divisions per conference. You have an East versus West type of thing, where we call it Atlantic Conference and Pacific Conference, named after the oceans on either side of the country. Atlantic Division is the East, which is based mostly the Northeast, mostly New York, New Jersey, Philadelphia, as you mentioned, Bart King earlier. And then you have the South in the Atlantic, which is North Carolina, Atlanta, Georgia, and then 2 Florida teams. And then you have the Central, which is the whole strip from Texas all the way up to Michigan. That's the Central Division over in the Pacific Conference. Then you have the West, California, and of course, Seattle. So what minor league cricket has done is they've said, okay, we want to raise the standard of cricket all around the country in every way that we can, including infrastructure, and most importantly in infrastructure. Any owner that owns a minor league cricket team has a mandate to have at least a hybrid wicket. Originally it was to have a turf wicket, but as we know, that's a very expensive thing to maintain. If you have one great turf facility in each of those 4 zones, that's a big step up. Or to have 1 or 2 in each of those 4 zones, that's a big improvement. We don't have anything in the East yet. that's the biggest area. Obviously, land is the most expensive there. You're talking about New York, New Jersey, Washington, D.C., Philadelphia, that megapolis up there. The mandate is the owners have to create a turf wicket, or at least a hybrid wicket, which is actually a massive step up from AstroTurf. Hybrid wickets, if your viewers don't know about them, very worth your time learning about, especially if you're involved in cricket and you want to get something close to turf, but your club doesn't have the resources. Hybrid wicket is an excellent compromise. One of the big initiatives is to improve the infrastructure in the country, and with that will come better cricket played across the country, and we'll be able to compete more internationally. Also, the minor league, each of those teams is mandated to include one U19 player in every starting 11 and one U21 player in every starting 11. What that does is helps to reinforce the growth of youth cricket games in the country and the development of those players to reach a higher standard, obviously. We know that in this country, what tends to happen is most of the youth that play cricket in this country are pretty well to do. So they're going to go to college. So after that, they're going to be immersed in college, immersed in grad school, immersed in getting a career. So we lose a lot of cricketers from the age of 19 to about 24, 25. It's very unusual to see a former USA U19 player in the USA National. What we tend to see are players who used to play for first-class nations who come over here and naturalize, I guess, as far as the ICC is concerned. They wait their 3-year period and then they make the national team. That tends to be the model of the past. It's currently still in place, but I think the big hope is that minor league cricket, bringing a lot of good coaches here, bringing a lot of players from first-class nations and signing them up for contracts, and having them as coaches to coach these youngsters, and then having minor league there for them during these difficult college years. The games only happen on the weekends because of the distance the teams have to cover to meet each other, play these games. 10-week league for a T20, that's very long. Regular season is 7 weeks. Playoffs is 3 weeks. And that's very unusual for cricket to have such a long playoff. But in American sports, perfectly normal. In fact, our first round of the playoffs is a best-of-3 series. You have to win 2 games to advance to the semifinal round, which is very American. We always have these series in our playoffs. In fact, the NBA regular season and the NHL regular season have the same length. They're both 82 games long, and then they play best-of-7 series all the way through the playoffs. So by the end of the playoffs, you'll have played 28 extra games. If every series goes to 7, you'll have played 28 extra games on top of the 82. So you're talking about 110 games there. That's an awful lot of basketball, an awful lot of hockey. In the USA, that's how our sports go. We have really long leagues. We have long playoff seasons. You miss out on the playoffs, you miss out on an awful lot of cricket. Yeah, I love that about it. Our semifinal and final round for logistics take place in the same place. A little bit more like how it goes in England, where they have the finals weekend. So we have that here in Church Street Park in North Carolina. We have, I believe, the best place to watch cricket in the whole country. We've got a great wicket. We've got an excellent outfield, beautiful, and the setting is excellent. It's not unusual for our local Morrisville Raptors team, that's the name of our minor league team, to get, a few hundred people out for a regular season game. And then in the finals, we have about 2,000 people that come out and watch it. The finals are held during the day, which is also the same time where our local cricketers are playing cricket. Once we get the lights up to broadcast standard, now the lights are great for streaming for lesser standard cameras, but for the high standard television 4K cameras, you need more lighting. So once we get that up to snuff, we'll have even more people coming out to finals weekends because, everybody will be done with their games. So we have a very large cricket league in this area in North Carolina and 2 large cricket leagues in North Carolina. Ours in the Raleigh, Durham, Chapel Hill area has about 2,400 people in it. Most of those are hard tennis cricket players, which is similar to tape ball. I know in Pakistan there's a lot of tape ball played. I've played tape ball in the middle of the parking lots in the middle of the night during Ramadan. It's lots and lots of fun. So we have a big hard tennis league. And it's, as you would expect, it's a lot of people who used to live in the Indian subcontinent make up the majority of our cricket in the whole country, really, and a lot of Caribbeans, too. Yeah, so the idea is for minor league to finally, once and for all, unite the whole country into one league where selectors can easily get a good look at the players instead of having to judge not just the players, but the talent of the league that they're in, because every region will have their own leagues, and every one of those leagues will be a different standard. So this brings everything and standardizes it to a degree. We even have stats that are evolving out of this that are meant to compare players across zones, across different surfaces, because obviously you play on AstroTurf and you always play on AstroTurf and it's a small ground and you're a 6-hitter, you're going to have good numbers. But turf is a whole nother story. So we have stats that kind of bridge that gap that can help you see the difference. And last year was a great example. We had 2 turf wickets where the average first innings would be like 110, something like that. And then we had Astro wickets where the average first innings would be 200. So how do you compare those players to each other? You can't, unless you look at how they do compared to the average player that plays in the same conditions they play in. Obviously, you still have to see them on the different surfaces, but this player stood out. He was, 18% better than the average guy, or he created 20 more runs per game than the average player in the league that played in his conditions. So that's how you can compare these guys from coast to coast, different conditions with each other. All of these developments help to inform the selectors, and they help to bring up the infrastructure in the talent level in the league or across the country. And also they help to inform the selectors for the major league that's coming up, which will be 6 teams to start with. And obviously you'll probably want to have 6-7 American cricketers in each playing 11, to do the due diligence for the national effort, and then bring in some great foreign players to get some eyes from overseas. But all that said, we'll have had at least 2 seasons of minor league cricket behind us by the time we launch the major league. There should be a pretty good idea about who should be playing in the major league and who shouldn't. And we wouldn't have been able to determine that 2 years ago.
A fantastic articulation of the minor league cricket, the best explainer I have heard or read somewhere, Nate. So thank you for that. So talking about turf wickets, Nate, alongside the ICC certified stadium in Lauderhill, Florida, there are a number of turf wickets in use at the Moosa Stadium in Houston, BPL Cricket Ground in Chicago, Woodley Park in Los Angeles, and Indianapolis World Sports Park. So now, with the injection of millions of funds, where can we see the next turf wickets across America?
Well, let me update your list a little bit. We have Prairie View Cricket Complex in north of Houston. So now Moosa has pretty much just one ground now approved for ODI. They actually hosted ODI there, just south of Houston. Just north of Houston is a place called Prairie View Cricket Complex, which is, I think, 6 grounds. I think it might be 5 turf grounds and one hybrid ground now. It's something like that. Huge facility. It's very, very windy there. So you have to play it a different way. It's awfully hot too in the summer. That ground tends to get all of our national events right now. For example, last year, the national championship for the men's and the national championship for the men's U19 was held at Prairie View because you can play so many games at the same time. Here in Morrisville, we have a turf wicket at Church Street Park. We have hosted T20 internationals. That was back in 2018. USA does not play enough T20 internationals. We actually have only ever played 2 at home that weren't a part of an ICC pathway event. That's a shame. We need to get on that. But the facility that you mentioned in Indianapolis has not been used for cricket for quite some time, unfortunately, even though it was a beautiful facility. All kinds of reasons for that. One of them is there's really not a lot of cricket played in Indianapolis, so it's tough to maintain that. You can't just have a ground and hope for USA to get a qualifier that they host. But you have to have leagues playing on it all the time to sustain it. And then you have Morgan Hill out in the San Francisco area. They have a turf wicket ground there, and they have a hybrid wicket ground there. They played a major league 50 overs league there this past spring that featured, Sami Aslam, Hamad Azam, a lot of great players, Unmuk Chan. And they actually played some of those games on the hybrid wicket, and it was really good quality. So that was a great test of that ground. Now we have a turf wicket now in Seattle, which has an amazing, gorgeous view of a mountain behind it. It might look like Pakistan or something, It's
Okay.
it's beautiful. They just had their first games there. As you know, first games on a real turf wicket. It's going to take some while for that to set. I think we're going to be looking at that really being in pristine condition next year. And then there is a hybrid wicket in St. Louis now that they just installed. There's a ground in Philadelphia that's showing a lot of promise. I'm hoping that can get a hybrid wicket. I think the priority should be to get a turf or hybrid wicket on a very nice big outfield in the New Jersey, New York area. That should be a big priority. But once again, that's the hardest one to do. That's where we're going right now. We're bringing more hybrids. There's a company they're buying them from called GABA in Australia. It's a mat that you roll down on top of, I believe, on like cement. And the mat has longer, very good artificial grass strands. And what you do is then you lay down a clay on top of the mat and you push it in evenly in between the artificial grass blades. And you have to roll that. It does break up, like if you played like a multi-day game there, it would break up like a turf wicket would, but not so much because of the artificial grass blades. It's going to hold it together like real grass roots would. That gives a little bit of that variation you want to see on a natural surface, whereas AstroTurf is just too easy. So this allows the spinners to bowl the way they need to. You have that natural clay under there. You can get the swing, you can get the turn off the wicket, and it creates a bigger challenge for the batters. I've heard that it tends to be a little bit slow, but that's also a good thing. It's a great way to learn cricket, play the correct shots. If the wicket's a little bit slower and the outfield is fast, that's the opposite of what a lot of Americans are used to, which is fast wicket, slow grass. So, you make that perfect cover drive and you get nothing for it. You get a single. because it just dies. So we would rather see the opposite of that, which is the hybrid kind of gives you. Now, obviously, it's going to play according to how it's prepared and how well it's rolled, things like that. But all that stuff helps the players too. They have to read the wicket. So that's what the hybrid does. And I became a believer in this hybrid over the last couple of years because of the fact of how expensive a turf wicket is to maintain. And I've seen how much effort it takes because we have an awesome turf wicket here. We have a 4-strip square at Church Street Park that was originally curated by a guy named David Agnew during COVID. When the CPL was limited to just 2 grounds, he was the groundskeeper at one of those 2 grounds. He also was the groundskeeper at Seddon Park in New Zealand. He's Australian, and he traveled to GT20 the 2 years that they had the GT20 league in Canada, and he was the main curator there. He's the guy you call if you need to pop up a ground in about 6 weeks. And so he originally set up our wicket here, and they trained the locals, and we have a guy now who is the curator who is absolutely phenomenal. Has no background in cricket, but came to learn the game through maintaining the ground. His name's Pat. He's maintained and curated an amazing wicket here at Church Street Park in Morrisville, North Carolina, and keep us on the map, Yeah, that's where things are going. Chicago's up and coming. It's great to see some of these communities coming around minor league cricket. It's great to see them coming around their teams. And you're seeing it actually a little bit more in the areas where you don't have clusters of teams. Like here in Morrisville, there's not a team within 6 hours of us. You have to drive 6 hours to Atlanta to get to 2 teams, and then you have to drive 6 hours to DC to get to a team, and then 7 to get to a Philadelphia, So in those areas where the teams kind of like are kind of like isolated, fans tend to gather around the team a little bit better. We see it in Seattle. Their fan base is pretty strong. It's growing. It's going to grow even more now that they have that beautiful ground they're playing at, Tollgate Farm. And then another area where you see a good fan base is St. Louis, believe it or not. That's because they have a pretty decent youth program there. But yeah, it's several hours between St. Louis and any other place. One of the Chicago teams is actually having success this year. We had 2 Chicago teams last year and this year, but we had 2 teams last year that did very poorly. One of the teams got canceled, and they've installed another team in its place, and that team is being run very, very well. That team's having success, and I see them being able to build some fan bases. They just need a good ground. They just need an attractive ground with a good hybrid wicket and some nice short grass, because right now they have a very springy wicket with very thick grass. So you get a tall guy like Calvin Savage from South Africa, you give him something overpitched on that ground, you're going to have to dig it out of the trees. Those guys know, but they also knows how to bowl on that too. But yeah, I think that would help out a lot. But yeah, we're moving in the right direction. The big exciting thing is Dallas. So let me give this a little context too. A couple of years back, Major League Baseball canceled several minor league baseball teams. These are the farm teams that feed into the major leagues. Those teams used to be run by themselves, but Major League kind of took over and said, all right, we're taking over minor league baseball, and we're going to cut 40 teams. We're just eliminating 40 teams. And this is 40 out of probably 200 or 180 or something like that. But they cut 40 teams. So a lot of those teams left venues behind. Some of them went and joined an existing independent league that wasn't associated with Major League, and some of them just folded. So there was a venue left behind in Dallas for a minor league team called the Air Hogs. It was like a flight team name because of the location it was in. That venue was left behind. So Major League Cricket purchased the lease to it, and they're now redoing the stadium, basically. They're reconfiguring it for cricket. So they're tearing up areas, making the ground larger, reconfiguring the seats. And it's going to have 7,000 permanent seats and enough space for 15,000 people to come and view. They'll have hills out in one side, seats on the other. There's so many good things about this ground. The piece of land it's on is much bigger than the stadium itself, and it's a lot of grass. And so you can put several grounds out there. You can have the minor league games happening there on the outside, because I'm sure it'll be expensive to lease the ground. That stadium is exciting. It's also located next to ample amounts of parking because it's in a entertainment district, and there's other things for people to do right around there. And there's already a lot of parking built in. They're putting $20 million into this stadium, and it's going to be the centerpiece for American cricket. They're probably going to move their headquarters to Dallas, or USA will too, possibly. It's dead in the center of the country. So it's a 3-hour flight from Dallas to anywhere in the USA. And that's pretty good when you talk about a country our size. It's convenient for all the cricketers, which is important. and all the fans too. Nobody's going to want to mind flying into Dallas to watch a game. So the big challenge is going to be getting the existing cricket fans on board with Major League Cricket when most of the existing cricket fans in this country are still fans of the nations they come from. If you all of a sudden showed up here in Chicago, you would still be a Pakistan fan, I'm sure. It's that's going to be the big thing, is getting the existing community to care about American cricket. And therefore, you're going to have to go after new fans as well. A lot of people like to cater to the Indian audience. We've seen the CPL sometimes scheduling their games super early in the morning because they're trying to get that Indian television audience. But if you look at the value of the average American consumer, we can't make up India's numbers, can't make up their billions of people numbers. But the average value of the American consumer is the American dollar is something like 75 times more than India's rupee. So you can see there, we don't need to have a billion people watching. We can get by with a lot less than that. But we do need to engage the American fan base, other traditional American sports, and we need to adopt some of the American sports, the way that those sports are run. People know we're sports crazy here. You've heard of people when they're complaining about international cricket falling away and giving way to franchise cricket, and that's a concern in much of the world. One of the things they say is, we're Americanizing cricket. And my thought is, if only we were Americanizing cricket. If the ICC ran like American sports do, if the ICC just adopted the Major League Baseball model, for example, we wouldn't have any poor full member nations, and we would have much better off associate nations, because Major League Baseball's profit sharing model is that every team pools 48% of their profits together. The whole league does. All 30 teams, pools their 48% of their profits together and then redistributes them around the league exactly even share. So imagine if the ICC did this with monies, instead of you have India getting such a huge amount, and then you have everybody else like stair steps all the way down. And the funny thing is, the American dollar goes a lot further in India. It's just exponentially better. It's like giving them 10 times that much. So that's unnecessary. If we can get the ICC or the franchise leagues to just adopt these American models. Socialism is a bad word here. Our sports leagues are the best in the world, pretty much. And they are very socialist. Like, it's the most socialist thing about the USA. And they work very well that way. If cricket really did Americanize, we would be in really good shape. Cricket would be in good shape. So it always offends me when people say, cricket's becoming Americanized. And I'm like, no, not really. And they say this about everything. They say this about the team names of the franchises, all of our team names. Most of them have good reasons behind them. I kind of have a problem with like Tridents changing their name to the Royals because of the new owners. I don't like that, especially the year where they shed the monarchy.
Rightly pointed out. You made a very comprehensive summary of the turf wickets and adding the references from other leagues to add more richness to your answer. Now, talking about the international USA team, and as you mentioned that the international USA cricket team for men, they don't play much cricket. I looked up some numbers. They have played 50 internationals, including 21 T20Is, which should have been a lot more. So, against which country do you see the USA cricket team have the fiercest rivalry?
Canada. Well, I believe Canada. Now, right now, there's a rivalry evolving with Nepal, mostly on social media.
Okay.
Because I don't know if you noticed this, but a week ago, Ali Khan tweeted out on Twitter, Nepal fans are the worst. Something like that. Now, you're on Twitter. You know that Nepal has quite a presence on Twitter. Probably as far as Twitter goes, Nepal's got the best presence in associate cricket, which is no surprise. They have the biggest fan base in all of cricket. And they have a very passionate fan base, very loyal fan base for sure. Very nationalistic fan base too, apparently. Yeah, so they didn't like that Ali Khan said that, of course. So there was about several days of some of the worst things you could read said about somebody. And there's some story behind that. When Nepal was just at Moosa Stadium, there was a fan who had made a big sign, and he was banging a drum. So first of all, there were hundreds and hundreds of Nepal fans that showed up, not surprisingly. And there were maybe a couple dozen USA fans, which is not surprising either. For a one-day game in the middle of the week, right? But the Nepal fans, they show up for everything. Ali Khan was dancing every time USA would get a wicket. The fans were translating this as he's rubbing it in our face. From a couple of people on the ground, I've been told he was dancing for the fan who brought the drum and brought the big Ali Khan sign. It was a sign spelled out in Urdu and Hindi, yeah. Urdu and Hindi, yes. And it was, long live Ali Khan or something like that. I can't remember. So he's clapping and dancing for this fan. So the Nepal fans see the sign and they start to stand in front of the sign, trying to cover it up. So there was some feuding going back and forth. And for me as a spectator, I thought this was just kind of all in good fun. but apparently there was some bad blood. Ever since that time, Ali he showed on Twitter some of the messages he was getting from Nepal fans, pretty bad. And then that's when he responded the way he did. But he shouldn't have said that. I understand why he said it, seeing what I've seen. That's why that rivalry is growing right now. Fairly one-sided because, Nepal fans will point out to you that there aren't nearly as many USA cricket fans as there are Nepal fans. But I'd say the real rivalry is Canada. That's a real rival. And you pointed out that the USA's only played 21 T20 since 2019 when T20 internationals were extended to associates. We've only played 50 total international games, and just about all of those games have been pathways. So if the ICC doesn't have a tournament, USA is not playing cricket. We talk a lot about full members, how these bilaterals are kind of silly. They don't have any context in the full member world. And, a lot of that's true. It's almost like the full members don't want to play any cricket of context, and the associates only play cricket of context. You know what I mean? Full members don't want to play in a league where they could get relegated or they don't automatically make it to the World Cup, right? England, India, they've played in leagues before where they didn't even know they were in a league as far as the context goes. Whereas the associate members always playing for context, always playing to keep their spot.
Nate, it was awesome interviewing you and learning so much about American cricket, the minor league, major league. So have a fantastic day and thanks a lot for your time.
Yeah, no problem. It was awesome talking to you, Hashim. Good luck to you, and I'm sure we'll talk again soon.
Definitely. Take care.
All right. Take care.